Bitcoin hits a 9-week high of 95,000, while Mastercard expands deeper into crypto. We cover all this right now in the Collective Shift weekly recap, actionable insights, and a breakdown into the crypto market, all in under 30 minutes. Simon, another week of gains in the crypto market.
Yeah, excitement seems to be hitting the market now, isn't it? I think everybody is finally starting to shrug off those bearish tendencies, and I think people are looking for green skies ahead. And, hopefully it keeps going that way. Obviously, it's going to depend on what coin you're holding as well, because not all coins are performing as well as Bitcoin is at the moment, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right. As we can see on the screen here, quite a dispersion in returns over the past week, as always. And we'll get into this even in a second. But yeah, just for the meantime, 7-day returns, ETH more than nearly double Bitcoin's return in the past 7 days, which is something we haven't seen in a very long time. Solana up around 6%, much the same as Bitcoin. A notable outperformer is Sui, which has climbed up to now 13th by market cap, and that is up by nearly 60% over the past 7 days. So we'll get into that a bit later as well. But as Simon touched on, I think with any rebound or any market really, crypto in particular, you see a whole range of returns on individual assets, and we really place a premium on monitoring, I guess, the momentum that you are seeing whenever the crypto market rebounds. I really encourage people to closely keep track of which cryptocurrencies are bouncing the strongest, because it tends to inform what will happen over the coming weeks and months. So to that end, we are seeing the likes of AI and meme coins really strongly perform over the past month or so. As we know, a lot of the AI tokens and meme coins, for that matter, fell by about 80 to 90% in many cases between December and earlier in April. So quite a brutal period. So you would expect them to bounce quite strongly. But I think even from my perspective, still holding some of those AI tokens, Simon, I have been surprised to see AI come back as strongly as what it has, given how much it was down in the dumps.
I'm probably more surprised by how far some of the bigger AI tokens went down. I wasn't expecting 90% pullbacks on some of them. I'm not surprised to see it rebound, because AI's got that lovely little double whammy of being interesting in TradFi and interesting in crypto. So it's kind of like, well, if TradFi is interested in it, then blockchain's interested. To me, it sounds like it should go up, because there's a lot of interest in this space. We know it's the emerging technology. It makes sense for it to go up, in my mind.
Yeah, well, that certainly is the case there. And for anyone listening, AI is up 48% as a sector the past 30 days. That is the leading sector, just slightly over Bitcoin related projects. Over the past 7 days, even AI is holding up there. Meme coins overall as a sector, I thought they had come back a lot more strongly than what it appears. They are still in the top sort of 4 or 5 in terms of sector specific returns. But again, to your point earlier, a lot of dispersion in individual meme coins, I suppose, with some maybe lagging behind. I haven't checked myself, but maybe the likes of Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, some of those larger meme coins perhaps are sort of, keeping the performance down a bit of the overall sector.
Definitely keep the performance down, but I think what we're also seeing, especially from the Solana ecosystem, where most of meme coin mania came in last year, we're not seeing meme coin mania. We're seeing a very few select meme coins actually start outperforming again. So whereas it used to be, dozens, maybe even 50 odd meme coins that would do well, now we're literally only probably seeing a handful that are actually outperforming the market at the moment.
Yeah, pivoting almost to the very, very entertaining stuff, to the dry and boring, but very important stuff, and macro land.
Seamless integration is the next topic. Well done.
We won't drag on too much about this, but it obviously everyone always says, "Oh, this week's very important," but I think this one actually does hold some weight. We have a lot of economic data coming out this week. It all just seems to coincide, given we are now entering the first week of May. We're seeing the Q1 results for GDP in the US coming out this week. So again, big headline might be significant there if we do actually see a negative growth, or the US economy actually shrinking in Q1. It's projected that it will be, I think 0.1 or 0.2% growth. But again, if we see it actually coming weaker than expected, that would, I guess, propel quite a bit of fear that's already in the market and uncertainty. So just a watch there. Otherwise, we've got some other important, releases such as PCE price index, which is again just another really widely watched gauge of inflation in the US. So that's coming out this week, and then we also have some other important data such as the manufacturing purchases index. So again, that's one that's very important at the moment, given what we're seeing with tariffs, which is still, I think we both agree here in many ways of all the whole macro stuff. Of that picture, the most important, I guess, story at the moment remains the tariff news. But as you've been saying, Simon, as well, even that itself is seeming and starting to have sort of a weaker reaction on the market without much happening, I suppose, in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think the tariff is mainly known now. We kind of know what's going to happen. Obviously, Trump can do whatever he wants, as we've seen many, many times. But I think the GDP one is a really important one because there's still all this talk about recession fears. And so obviously if we get a positive GDP growth for the quarter, then that kicks that can down the road for another 6 months. And I think a lot of pundits will then say, well, probably the recession might be off the cards. Maybe they've actually managed to massage the economy through this. So I think it's a really big one. If it prints negative, then yeah, everyone will really double down on the recession fears. If we print positive, then I reckon that talk might go away.
It's amazing what just like a 0.1, 0.2 percentages like has on a whole like narrative of like the global economy and just everyday punters, everyday investors. Like you avoid that headline or you hit that headline based on like the very, very tiny percentages. So yeah,
it's a tiny percentage.
It is. I know like, the change in that.
The positive or the negative score really matters a lot on the global scale of things with this. So yeah, it's massive, but hopefully it does end up positive like a lot of people are predicting.
Yeah, spot on there. But no, otherwise, happy days in the crypto market, at least overall. So yeah, back above that $3 trillion mark in terms of the overall size of the crypto market. That's the first time that's happened since the start of March. So yeah, hopefully if all the economic data keeps, more or less not spooking everyone and we keep seeing progress on tariffs, which we may even get some more comments. I think this week, Scott Bessent will keep doing interviews and talking in front of the press. So, hey, if that all continues to go as expected, then things will continue to go up for crypto, in my opinion. But let's see where we go from here. I think Simon, ETF positively has really sort of come back with some strength.
Yeah, it certainly has. And it's kind of, I guess, a measure of confidence in the market, I think is the word I would put onto it. When a lot of people are buying Bitcoin through their ETFs, people are obviously willing to take risk on. And so that's obviously being shown in the price. Price is going up as people start buying. Funnily enough, that's how the system works. So we've seen BTF flows kind of ebb and flow for a bit. I know the Ethereum ETF has been down for quite a bit. And so for the Ethereum ETF to start going up again as well, I think that is a clear sign that people are willing to take on more risk as the environment is kind of starting to settle. And I mean, the reason I think that's kind of settling to a degree is, the tariff talk. We had obviously Trump saying, oh, we're close to an agreement with China. And so positive news boosts the market up. And then China came out and said, no, we're not. And negative news didn't make the market go back down. And so that's a bull market when that's kind of things happening. Positive news pushing it up, negative news not pushing it down. That's bull market kind of territory really when that's kind of happening.
Yeah, good observation there. I didn't even notice that. But yeah, we've seen Trump and China sort of coming out with contradicting statements, which again is very, very consistent with Trump's approach. So no, that's a good sign there, and hopefully more of the same. I think more demand for Bitcoin has obviously kept going with this rise from around 75,000 up to around 95,000 in recent weeks. We may be getting we are getting a new driver of demand entering the market sometime soon, after a big announcement last week with a new competitor to Michael Saylor's strategy or MicroStrategy coming into the market. So this is something we've been talking about for many months, in terms of all of these new companies forming that are putting Bitcoin on their treasury as an actual strategy of like accumulating, well, more Bitcoin and overall making more capital, in the long term. That's been a big topic of this cycle so far, and it looks like that's going to just continue. The big announcement last week was that we've got a partnership essentially around many companies, Tether and Bitfinex, which is more or less the same company. So Tether is the biggest stablecoin in crypto, or one of the two. And then we've got SoftBank as well as Cantor Fitzgerald. So those four entities teaming up on creating a new entity called 21 Capital. So again, we've talked about Cantor Fitzgerald on this podcast like last year. Obviously, they're important to know for crypto because they're about a 5% owner of Tether. They acquired some ownership in Tether last year, which is one of crypto, if not the world's most profitable company. And of course, Howard Lutnick is, was the CEO and very high up in Cantor Fitzgerald, and now his son, is in charge, while Howard Lutnick serves as Trump's one of his ministers there, being the commerce secretary. So there's some connections there. We know Trump is very pro crypto, and I guess people point to Howard Lutnick as one of many examples about why Trump is so pro crypto. But back to Bitcoin and the demand for it. Notably, this new entity will start with, I think it's around 42,000 Bitcoin. So that's all of the existing Bitcoin that all of these entities hold, more or less. So that will automatically, from the get-go, make 21 Capital the third largest Bitcoin treasury globally. So MicroStrategy is number one. So already they'll be number three. And of course, their plan will be to continue to accumulate Bitcoin, as well as to use their existing Bitcoin to earn a yield, such as what MicroStrategy has been doing as well in recent years. So this is a really big development. And I think for myself as an investor in Bitcoin and other crypto, like I just love seeing headlines like this, because it's just more demand coming for Bitcoin ultimately, in a very sustained or sort of incremental and deliberate fashion. And nothing that is, like, from my understanding, not really taking on this extreme like leverage and extreme risk that we saw in previous bull markets that obviously ended very dramatically, with the collapse of, well, many big companies in the crypto space.
Yeah, and I see this as, I guess, a moniker for the whole Bitcoin is digital gold narrative that's been going on. I think this is it in play here, where more and more people are seeing it as a digital gold play. And so they want to make sure that they're a part of that, because, longer term, eventually some point in time, Bitcoin is less volatile because it reaches its saturation point as a global reserve in some way, shape or form. And that's when the gains are stopped. Or not stopped, but they just slow down more dramatically. And I think everyone's seeing that now, and they want to make sure that they're a part of that growth cycle still.
Yeah, so we'll monitor that, and of course, as we covered, I think last week, there's even new Solana, publicly listed companies coming out with a similar approach for Solana. But to your point, the big watch is Bitcoin becoming more like this digital gold over time. Next one here, well, we got Simon with Mastercard.
So Mastercard are basically expanding their support for stablecoins, and I guess we've kind of all seen before these crypto debit cards or crypto credit cards, which are in existence. But I think the main thing that's a real standout point of difference here is that Mastercard is allowing the merchant side of things. The merchant can settle in whatever stablecoin they want. So that could mean, I could pay for something in Australian dollars, but the merchant will say, no, I want to receive USDC, please. And so that is a big game changer in my mind. Like, that doesn't exist before. So if that, actually comes to fruition, because obviously there's a lot of probably wallets to put in place in the back of it, I think that's a real game changer for what Mastercard is standing for, allowing merchants to choose rather than just allowing someone to spend some of their crypto.
Yeah, really big deal here. I think stablecoins have been something that Mastercard and Visa have been sort of working on for many years now. I think I did read earlier, since 2021 for Mastercard. So obviously this stuff takes time to put together, all the infrastructure in the back end to make it work seamlessly and ultimately be something that's a really cost-effective solution for different merchants around the world. So I assume this will be rolled out, geographically, probably, in one or two countries, I would assume, and then, hopefully even go globally in the long term. And again, another example of blockchain adoption, abstracted away in many ways. But yeah, as investors, hopefully these using public blockchains in time, whereas they're sharing the likes of Ethereum, maybe even Solana, in time, would be the ideal case for the average crypto investor.
Yeah, I think the abstraction is the word that most people probably don't understand, but like we live in a world where all this payment stuff is completely seamless and we have no idea what's going on. And so I think
Yes.
Mastercard know to use stablecoin payments, it needs to have that same experience. So people need to know it's happening without knowing it's happening, kind of thing. And that's important for it to get right, and that takes time.
Yeah, 100%. We've got here a development that just came in just before we started recording, but it looks like we finally got a state in the United States that has actually gotten their Bitcoin reserve bill all the way through, up to the final stage now, with all that's needing here is the governor of Arizona. Now they are awaiting to actually approve this bill that has passed both houses of Arizona's, state Congress. Ultimately, here we've got the agreement, and this bill is proposing the state treasurer and the retirement system in Arizona to invest up to 10% of available funds in Bitcoin. So if that does get approved, that will, I suppose, make history. Ultimately, it would be the first state in the US that has, requiring public funds to invest in Bitcoin. So as we covered, we're not got to be realistic here. I suppose a lot of states have ultimately, these bills have fallen short in all states so far. So this is the first one to get through, but of course, everything needs to start with the first, and in this case, looks like Arizona is in the driver's seat, I think, to become the first.
I'm just interested to watch this because it's just the political parties at play here. Because Arizona is a Republican-held parliament in both. I don't know what they call them, chambers. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The two houses that's got to get through there, but the governor is a Democrat, so she could veto the bill and stop it. So it's going to come down to party lines and say, hey, how much do I want to stick it to Trump is kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen right here.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting watch. So now we'll cover that for sure. Moving on, we have, of course, altcoin updates. Once prices start moving, no surprise, we see the announcements starting to hit the headlines again. Once again, really just want to focus on some of the more major altcoin updates. So we've got quite an entertaining one coming up. But first things first, Helium. So they're the Deepin project on Solana, or one of them. Again, for anyone new, Deepin stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. Just think of things like mobile networks or many other, I suppose, examples of real world wireless networks that are ultimately trying to mimic that, and by building on blockchain. Helium is the poster child in many ways for Deepin, and they've partnered with AT&T, so a large telecom company there. They're looking to bring Wi-Fi to thousands of US locations. So that's one that I did see as more of a large company, I suppose, in many ways, partnering with a crypto project that reminds me of the ICO days in many ways. So I think these days, when you do see announcements like this these days, particularly for a US big telecom provider, that makes me almost, now that we've passed all the pain points of ICO era and whatnot, it does hold a bit more legitimacy in my eyes when I do see something get all the way through to a big company signing up or partnering with a crypto project. Of course, as Simon and me always remind you, this really long term doesn't have any impact. Short term doesn't really have much impact on prices or fundamentals, I should say. prices, it can definitely drive, I guess, what the market perceives the quality of a project to be. But yeah, it was an interesting announcement I did see in the past week.
Yeah, I just add to that yes, I like Helium as a project. I don't like it as an investment, but it's great to
Yes.
see more blockchain use being done.
Yeah, absolutely. Never have held it, but it's certainly a project I like to keep track of. Next one here. This was an interesting 70% gain in price. I think that came off the back of this announcement. What have we got up on the screen here?
Yeah, the good old Trump meme coin, which many would probably point to the point where the cycle started to turn around. I think Donald Trump has added utility to his coin now, has he? Because the top 220 holders of the Trump coin, the Trump meme coin, get to go and have a gala dinner with him, like a private dinner with him. So getting access to the President of the United States simply by owning a meme coin, that's utility.
Yeah, yeah. It's so much more than the vast majority of projects that we've seen over the years. There we see the announcement there, May 22nd. So that's actually, well, yeah, very soon. So I think that's why prices in many ways rallied so hard. And it rallied so hard that I actually saw Trump is now a top 50 cryptocurrency by market cap. So yeah, more a reflection, I suppose, how little the space has fundamentally delivered. Still a lot building, obviously, but the fact it could get up to the top 50 so quickly was quite eye-opening. But yeah, we have seen, interestingly, last thing from me, Simon, is that interestingly this coincided with, I think, the start of these tokens unlocking. So as we always say, a lot of projects often will save big announcements for when their tokens start to unlock to team members and private investors. It's funny to see Memecoin or Trump actually use that same playbook that many other crypto projects have used over the years.
It's exactly what I was going to comment on.
Okay,
It
yeah.
sounds a little bit, dodgy. I guess that's what everyone's, throwing stones at this story about. Is that basically you're providing a dump for your liquidity onto the market, pumping the price. It more reminds me to a degree of, again, this is going back in the day for people who were there for Gary V's NFT collection. So he actually had, buy this NFT and you get to go have dinner with Gary V. So it's very much out of that playbook. I hope it's not just trying to pump up the price so that they can dump their coin on it. That'd be really bad. But here we have, in my mind still, it's a president's meme coin being given utility. That's what we want to see, utility in our tokens.
Yeah, it would have been a lot worse seeing it just be ignored and Trump never, I guess, mentioning it or being a part of it.
Never talking about it again would have been worse, I feel, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely, which it was looking that way. But yeah, certainly a surprise to see that last week. In terms of what we have looking forward to for the week ahead, as we said, a really it's important week in the macro landscape, and also keep an eye out for just updates on tariffs. But in terms of crypto, we have one of the biggest conferences globally on the calendar coming this week. So Token2049, well, they now have two locations. This is the second time that they're running it in Dubai. So I would definitely be expecting a lot of big news to come out of that. That's happening formally, I think, at the very end of April, very start of May. But I think we have dozens, if not hundreds, of side events that will be surrounding that conference. One of those that's sort of, again, just using that as an opportunity to have a big global event is SUI. So they have their SUI base camp, so a big global conference that SUI has on their annual calendar. That's happening May 1st and May 2nd. So yeah, certainly Token2049, expect a lot of big altcoin updates, but SUI is one that we're paying particularly close attention to, given it ran up, I think, 60 or so % in the past week.
Yeah, and he had a big run up basically off, I guess, some elements of fundamentals, but probably also leading into this base camp, because I think they've been hinting at a lot of announcements. And then, of course, there was the rumor of Pokemon being on SUI, which has been totally unsubstantiated as far as I'm aware. But it just made me chuckle. Again, we're going back in time to a degree, is that, remember a Senate hearing with a senator talking to Gary Gensler about is a Pokemon card a security. Those kind of conversations they got brought to my mind here when Pokemon is rumored to be going on to Sui. Hey, maybe they will, but look, Sui's hot at the moment, and so again, positive news, whether it's real or not, is moving the market at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm very keen to see what comes out of this this Basecamp conference, and hey, maybe even some news about Pokemon. We'll definitely be covering it regardless next week.
Maybe it's a Pokemon game on the Sui Play console. Who knows?
Yeah, certainly. I think we could check Polymarket or something for some. I'm sure people are taking bets on what's going to be announced. So yeah, you can check out the Pokemon Sui rumors just by having a Google of it and checking it out. But again, just wait for any confirmation, which we haven't got just yet. Over to some rapid fire. So we'll finish things off this week, Simon, as we always do, with underappreciated or overappreciated. I'll hand it over to you, and I will get my screen up here.
Sure. So for me, the underrated thing is that the US bank regulators are removing some of their documents which are advising caution to the banks when it comes to the use of cryptocurrency. So I think that is a fairly big game changer, because people in Australia are probably feeling some of that similar kind of pain in that the banks are restricting how much money you can put to exchanges. They're setting daily limits. They're setting caps on how much you can send per month. All these kind of restrictions that are in place. And the US, obviously, different system, different kind of cautionary restrictions on it. But if the US banking system is starting to be more friendly towards crypto, Australia's a bit of a sheep in that regards. They'll probably start following suit. And so, maybe some of the pain that we've felt between traditional banks and crypto exchanges starts to go away, which I think will just make a far more seamless integration for everyone.
Yeah, good spot there. And continuing to see Trump, well, I suppose technically, the Trump administration, continuing to deliver on, US becoming more pro-crypto. So, eliminating a lot of these pain points in the past. The one from me is, I would say, underappreciated in the sense I didn't really see it covered too much. And I think it's because of how this is launching. So what we have seen here is Coinbase launching a new Bitcoin yield fund. So it opens on May the 1st. Ultimately, it won't be available to the vast majority of people. I believe it's only for institutional investors at the moment. Only for non-US institutional investors, that is, so even more limited. However, I think this is underappreciated, more so what this symbolizes, and more so I think it's a glimpse into where we're headed into the future, where potentially these guardrails are even, I guess, removed as sort of regulations come along and whatnot. So what we actually have here is people being able to earn a yield on their Bitcoin, which, as we've always said, should be inherently quite an alarming statement, given Bitcoin doesn't inherently have any yield. However, there are ways, through the likes of what previous failed companies such as BlockFi were doing, where the business model is very sound, provided you have enough, provided everything is compliant and done effectively. There are ways to earn a yield on that through various mechanisms, such as what Coinbase is proposing here. Initially, just through generating yield on various arbitrage strategies by day trading and whatnot, which can be done in a very sort of way that mitigates risk, and I suppose by people who do it as a full-time profession. They also have plans to expand into lending and then options strategies as well. So once again, it's a very limited early start, but I think it was underappreciated for that way, because of that reason. But a sign of things to come, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of big players who will fit into this category here who don't want to sell the Bitcoin because they want to pay the capital gains tax, but they want to be able to earn a yield from it. So I think they'll be interested in this.
Yeah, certainly. So, we'll leave it there. Big week ahead with Token2049, as we said. So now keep on top of any market updates and anything else we'll be sharing in our free weekly newsletter. So you can subscribe to that at collectiveshift.io/newsletter. That's collectiveshift.io/newsletter.